Hello everyone, Jules here, finally back on the channel. Sorry it's been a while, and I've got a really interesting Avengers theory to share with you today. I, like many, was blown away with Infinity War when it was released back in 2018, and ever since there have been countless predictions and guesses about what might happen to the MCU going forward. And now, with the first trailer of Avengers Endgame dropping recently, there's even more fuel for the fire. Thanks to what we've seen, it now falls to Captain America and the surviving OG Avengers to somehow find a way of undoing or stopping the snap altogether, finding a new way to rescue Tony Stark and to bring returning heroes back to the fold. To put it bluntly, it's not exactly like it's going to be a quick trip to the corner shop in terms of difficulty. Now, as Cap said in Infinity War, they don't trade lives, so it's not likely that they're going to go up and offer themselves as replacements for the Fallen. That wouldn't actually solve the issue on a global scale, and by the look of the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, everything goes back to normal. Or is that film a prequel? What if the bus that we see him on in Infinity War is actually the bus that is returning from Europe? No, that's a different video. Let's just stay focused. Either way, there's got to be some sort of reboot, soft or not, for the series to continue. But how? Well, one solution seems to shout louder than most. There's an awful lot that's already been said about how Avengers Endgame will use time travel to solve the issues caused by Thanos' snap. General thinking suggests that Ant-Man will be key on how time travel will even be possible, given his knowledge of the quantum realm and that specific mention of time vortexes in Ant-Man and the Wasp. There was even a hint of that in the Endgame trailer, as if you notice, the footage shown of Scott Lang seems to actually be archive footage. If it's from an archive, it's in the past, which means that's where Scott ends up when he eventually, somehow, comes out of the quantum realm. But there's something of a complication in the works here. Firstly, we don't know why the Avengers would time travel. It's not as simple as saying, well, it's to undo what Thanos did, because going back to collect the stones before Thanos can get his hands on them wouldn't actually work. That approach would ruin the timeline from even before the first Avengers movie and wipe out at least two characters, Vision and Scarlet Witch. Without the Infinity Stones, the Avengers would never have come together because they were united by Loki using one to subjugate his victims in the Avengers in his attempts to take over the Earth. Without the same Infinity Stone, Hydra wouldn't have been able to create Scarlet Witch with their secret genetic experiments, and without it later still, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner wouldn't have been able to bring Vision to life. And then there's the fact that the Russos have already teased that the plot of Endgame might depend on something other than time travel. They said some time ago that there's a key bit of technology involved in Captain America's Civil War that will come back into play in Endgame, and naturally, fans worked out exactly what they meant by that hint. The only possible answer to that little tease is Tony Stark's BARF, or binarily augmented retro framing, as you might know it. You'll remember that as the technology that he uses at the start of the film to recreate the last time that he saw his parents alive. When you think about it, that moment could have easily been done with a flashback, but introducing a technological means to recreate moments from the past is so intricately and so perfectly was specifically done because it would be more important elsewhere. It was a double-edged foreshadowing. In Civil War, Stark introduces BARF as an extremely costly method of hijacking the hippocampus. He admittedly adds that its intention is to clear traumatic memories, but from the demonstration, it's not clear how it clears anything. It just allows Tony to relive the moment in great detail. If anything, it opens up greater wounds. All we see is Tony seeing his memories as vividly as if they were happening right then. Presumably, his description means in a psychological fashion, the patient would be forced to face their trauma in the interest of confronting it and therefore beating it. So what the hell does this have to do with Avengers Endgame? Well, putting time travel aside for the moment and acknowledging that it might well be used to reverse the snap itself, or at least mess with the moment, what if Tony Stark returns to his BARF technology to force Thanos to relive his own most traumatic memory to try and convince him to help undo the snap, or to convince him never to do it in the first place, if that's the way the story goes? There was already a hint in Infinity War that Thanos is a more emotionally vulnerable character than some of the other villains in the MCU. Sure, he is a monster with a messiah complex, but he does have some humanity in him. Well, his equivalent of humanity. Consider his interaction with Red Skull and Gamora as he comes into possession of the Soul Stone, and his follow-up with the projection of young Gamora right at the end. In both cases, he expressed something approaching regret for the cost of what he had to do. He didn't exactly regret killing half of existence because he feels like this approach was right. No matter the cost, existence has to be decimated to ensure survival in the long term. But he shed tears for Gamora, and he told her that it cost him everything. That makes it sound an awful lot like his mental position could somehow be used against him, and clearly what matters is how that could be achieved. The Russos have already teased the fact that Thanos could be made to regret one hugely important element of the lead-up to the snap, and his anguish points at what that could be. There's no way Thanos would care enough about the death of his planet for it to be used to convince him to change his approach, because if anything, it actually instills within him the commitment to his plan. There's no way he can be made to feel the deaths of the billions he wiped out. He's too egocentric to care. The only thing that very obviously left any sort of mark on him was having to murder Gamora. She was the only person that mattered to him. And to be fair, the Avengers actually need the solution to their problem to be a mental one over a physical one. I mean, look at the way that Thanos obliterated the Hulk and Thor without even possessing a single Infinity Stone. They need a way of stopping that which cannot be stopped, and disabling his physical power could be the only way. Although it is yet to be seen how much Captain Marvel might be able to knock that chip off his shoulder. So, Thanos might have to be convinced to change his mind, or he has to be killed, and at this stage, the latter is definitely the harder prospect. Which leads me to another point. Why is Nebula still alive? I know this seems like a bit of a weird tangent, but it plays into the main theory. Surely, the moment that she told Thanos that Gamora knew about the Soul Stones, her story was finished. I say that because it's unlikely that she'll be the one to land the killing blow on the Mad Titan, and yet is still alive at the end of Infinity War, so she must have something left to do. That something could be twofold. First, she could tell the surviving Avengers about Thanos' relationship with Gamora, and then give them the key to what to dial into when using Barth to mess with his mind. And when his brain is being hijacked into Barth, she would be there to provide further evidence of his monstrous actions in the past. She is, after all, a walking monument to his unthinkable sins. Once he has the information from Nebula, it makes sense then that Tony Stark would use that information as ammunition for his weaponization of Barth against Thanos. She would know exactly what to use in mentally battering Thanos. His love for Gamora and the torture might be enough to get him to help return her and the others. And when you boil this down, it's actually something that would fit in with the themes of the MCU films, that while they show massive battles, each of them at their core are very personal tales. The Avengers is about a son, Loki, being rejected by his father, as well as a quest for global dominion. Black Panther is about claiming your legacy as well as taking over your home country. Civil War is about murdered parents and a lost friend as much as it's about superhero registration. Age of Ultron is about a creation wanting to prove itself to its creators as much as it is about the end of civilization on Earth. In those terms, Avengers Endgame could be about a father coming to regret the mistreatment of his daughters as much as it is about restoring the balance in the entire universe. And it's not like trauma isn't at the heart of every superhero tale. Thanos watched his planet crumble in on itself. Tony Stark is haunted by PTSD and his family's murderous legacy. Captain America is a man ripped from his own time who never got his final dance. Ronin is Hawkeye transformed by something unspeakably traumatic. Nebula and Rocket are the results of torturous experiments. Black Widow has red in her ledger, and so it goes on. In all of those cases, every single character wishes they could have done something different to change what happened to them. And doesn't that sound like a consciously built narrative context for something like Thanos being given the opportunity to change his mind? And for a character as stubborn and as single-minded as Thanos, that actually means rebalancing his mind through some external force, through Barth specifically. And just before I go, I'll leave you with this thought. Ironic, I know, given the subject of this theory, that Tony and Thanos are in some ways mirrors of one another. Thanos says that both are haunted by knowledge, and this line might be a clue that Stark will be the one to balance his mind in the same manner that Thanos himself balanced the universe. In the end, even a god couldn't take him down with a weapon forged specifically as a Thanos killer, and a monster the size of the Hulk was no match even when he wasn't fully powered. Therefore, unless there's some truly bizarre shenanigans coming our way, then the only one capable of beating Thanos is Thanos. So maybe the Avengers will have to think outside the box. And there we go, there's a theory on how the Avengers might use Thanos' own mind against him. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but if you want to chat more about this, you can follow me on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0. And as always, I've been Jules. Thank you so much for watching That Film Theory, and as always, you've been awesome.